Welcome to the Instant Speed Podcast, brought to you by FabDB.net. Now, FabDB.net is your premier source for deck building and skill improving tools. Don't forget to improve your account to a premium one. Get access to all that cool stuff, booster drafts, simulators, collection management, deck building tools, all that. FabDB.net, our sponsor here at the Instant Speed Podcast. And before we get to our awesome guest, that would be Daylon Mack, we're hitting you with the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the Instant Speed Podcast was on a little bit of a hiatus, a little 1 week vacation. I went out to Minneapolis to go see my buddy get married, and it was a little over a week of me just chilling and having fun with some friends, which was great. And I kind of just sort of stepped away a little bit from content creation and just the news cycle in general. But I think I got you guys a little bit wrapped up here in terms of what happened. Well, the winner of the Italian Nationals, that would be Pietro Gerletti. Now, Pietro took a little bit of an alternate route here. He won with Kano out of a field of 37 combatants. Pietro did take Kano to the promised land and won the Italian National. So congratulations to Pietro Gerletti. And the winner of the Hong Kong Nationals was Bun Ar, and they were playing Chain. Chain out of a field of 84 participants. Chain did emerge victorious. In the top 8 of that particular Nationals was 4 Briars, 3 Chains, 1 Oldham. So Chain won over Oldham in the finals there, so congratulations. Now, big news, awesome news, important news in the world of Everfest. Of course, that is the new set coming out in February for Flesh and Blood. But the big news here, frankly, is the fact that, well, we're getting paper wrappers. Yes, all that plastic that pollutes the world and just ends up in a gigantic patch in the middle of the ocean. Well, ain't happening this time because we're using paper, recyclable. It's a little bit more healthy in terms of environmental impact. So good on LSS. We're using paper wrapping for the future sets coming out for Flesh and Blood. Hey, it's about that time of year, right? December's rolling around. We still got some skirmish season going through. The armories are still up and running. How about the new festive holiday armory kits that are coming out? Take a look at these. Some very festive cold foil cracked baubles. And now, the cracked bauble, to me, is like one of the most useless things ever. But frankly, I think that this might be the most desirable prize that we have seen from a cold foil armory in a long while. Those festive bauble cold foil prizes, ooh la la. Get them while they're hot. And, well, we've got a hot guest for you right coming up next. That would be Daylon Mack is our guest here on the Instant Speed Podcast. The Instant Speed Podcast is so happy to welcome the 160th selection of the 2019 NFL Draft. He's an enthusiastic member of the Flesh and Blood community with reps at The Calling in Dallas, The Calling in Cincinnati. He was at Orlando. Welcome to the show, Daylon Mack. How are you, my friend?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Big fan of the podcast.
Well, it's very kind of you. I do appreciate that, my friend. And like we normally do whenever we have an awesome guest on the show, people might know you, they might not. I mean, you're kind of transcending two different worlds here, the world of athletics and the world of, I guess, e-athletics. I don't even know if I want to call it that, but why don't you just bridge the gap for us, my man? Why don't you just talk a little bit about what it was like going from where you began with card games all the way up to now with Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, so I pretty much got into card games in college. I went to Texas A&M, and I started off playing in the back of a Hastings because that's the only shop that I knew at the time. And I was actually playing Yu-Gi-Oh! There. It was kind of cringe card game, but I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And some guys walked in and was like, "Hey, we hold tournaments at our locals." And I was like, "Locals? I'd never heard of it. I'm a freshman in college. Just finally got to a bigger town because I'm from a small town." And I went there and, that's kind of, I saw they had all these card games and I started playing. I went from Yu-Gi-Oh! To Pokemon to Dragon Ball Super. And I just recently got into Flesh and Blood. Dallas was my first ever tournament. So that was quite the learning experience. I'll tell you that. So that's my transition.
You played at the Calling in Dallas, right?
Yes, I did.
In the main event? Or were you just kind of doing side events?
I was in the main event. I don't think if I would have won my last round, I would have topped because I lost like round 2, and it's the pairings are kind of based on like how early you lose. But I ended up losing my last round. I guess if I would have won, I would have went X2 and gave myself a chance. But I ended up losing. It was a super close game. I got fatigued. I was playing Lexi, which is a mistake. Apparently, you should not. But you got to play what you get in sealed. But wish I could have got the Briar Deck, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. I completely agree with you. If you're playing in sealed, then you just open up some garbage. That's what you do the best you can.
My next two actually in Cincinnati, I got a really good Briar Deck. I mean, and you get the Briar Deck, so I cruised the top 64 in that one, and then in Orlando on the ProQuest, I got the most insane. It was actually it was pretty wild. I got Plume as my headpiece. I had Deep Blue. I had Sutcliffe's. I had Flicker Wisp and Force of Nature in the main deck. So that was it. So I easily went 6-0 in that and was able to make top 8. And Zach Bunn ended up winning that all. So he's a good guy. I ended up talking to him as well.
So you just started this game relatively recently. I mean, Dallas seems like ages ago now that all these events have wrapped up. But I mean, it's funny. It's crazy because even talking with Tarek Patel, Tarek picked up the game and then literally a month later was winning these major tournaments. And it was kind of incredible how players can kind of pick it up and run with it. But again, a lot of these players, like you yourself, you say, you started with something like Yu-Gi-Oh! And then you moved on to other card games. And I'm just wondering, what really is it about Flesh and Blood that sort of gripped you to the degree where you're like, you know what, I'm going to go to Dallas. And then Dallas became Cincinnati. Cincinnati became Orlando, and you go into the ProQuest and did all this stuff. I mean, what is it about this game that really is gripping you and really hanging tight? So
I think it's just, they're just the competitive scene, man. The leaderboards, the ELO. I'm a competitive person. Maybe it's because I play football, but I'm just a competitive person. And when I see the leaderboards online, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to grind up there, get to the top, and it's very addicting. And I really like how rewarding Flesh and Blood is for just making the correct play. When you block correctly or attack with just enough or pitch right or pitch stack, it's very rewarding. And that's just very appealing to myself. And it's also a blessing and a curse in this game, because as rewarding as it is for doing things right, it is equally as punishing. And I've lost a lot of games where just pitching the wrong card or blocking, I guess, a little bit too much or not using some equipment there. It's very, just the little decision making is very addicting to me.
There was a game that I played. It was in ProQuest. It was I top 8'd ProQuest in Canada. And first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. As did you. I mean, you just crushed. You went 6-0 in your ProQuest, right? So you were just top of the heap there. But just to sort of add on to what you're talking about is the fact that it's how punishing it is to make one small little error. In that draft for the top 8, I played against an incredibly awesome player, David Rude, a really, really great card player. And you want to talk about making mistakes and getting punished for it. I had never played Lexi. I think I had one game of Lexi ever in my entire life, and I ended up drafting a Lexi deck because it was just kept getting passed to me. And I dropped down. Don't get passed a lot. It was one of those things where I'm like, I'm going to stay open and we'll see how this goes. But people just kept passing me great Lexi cards. It was like a pack 1, pick 5, and you're getting past these bombs of Lexi, mythics and stuff. I'm like, all right, I'm going to read the room here. I'll start taking. But it's just hard to pass up a Bramblespark whenever it appears. But still, the point is that you want to talk about getting punished for a bad play. I had never played it, and I had just done the whole muscle memory thing of arsenaling my last card being an arrow, and I needed that arrow to dominate, and I couldn't use my Shiver to dominate the arrow, which would have been the winning play. So I had to play the arrow the old-fashioned way, which was then blocked, but I had my opponent on basically 2 health, and it was a 5 damage arrow, and they had no way to really block it, and I ended up losing because they were able to double block, and I ended up losing that game. But again, the punishing element of just is just so, it's such a different end of the spectrum where you, like you're saying, you pitch correctly and you pitch stack right. You make it a really intuitive block. You overblock when you know that they're carrying some sort of combat trick. You feel so damn good, but man, does it punish you just as equally hard.
Yeah, it's very tough. I actually made that same mistake that you made in Dallas. It was my first time playing Lexi as well. I had Honing Hood to bail me out, but I did make the mistake. I ended up having to waste my Honing Hood because I did what you did. I was like, okay, I'll just arsenal arrow and my turn started, and I was like, oh wait, like
Yeah.
I can't do any of the things that I want to do. So
yeah. She's got kind of a little bit of a high skill cap when it comes to how to properly navigate a Lexi match. It's a whole different ball game. But like you're talking about, you just draft a Briar and you just cruise through it. Like it's a whole different thing.
It's so tough too, man. Because like for Briar, like you want the Earth cards. When I do draft, I always start off getting like the Earth cards because I'm like, okay, that keeps me open with Oldhim and lets me go with Briar if I have to pivot either way. With Lexi, it's like the only way I would play Lexi is if I had like the lightning cards. Because if it's just ice, then you pretty much can't beat Oldhim with just ice. Like they'll just laugh at you and fatigue you, and you'll just lose. But if you have the lightning, you can at least go wide and kind of make it tough for them. I still think the matchup is like very Oldhim favored, but I only feel comfortable in draft going Briar or Oldhim.
You gotta hit something big with Lexi. You have to have the right equipment. I find like even in cases where I'd be like when I played her in that, I had my opponent with like where I thought I had them against the ropes and a 3 stack of frostbites on them. I'm like, okay, this game's wrapped up. I just need to basically not mess up, which I did. But ultimately, like you said, it just seems like in that format. But we've seen players kind of come through and really, I don't want to say revolutionize Lexi, but maybe just figure her out to a degree and properly execute what she's supposed to do, which is great to see. But I mean, you're talking about you went from Dallas, and you said that Dallas was a very big learning experience for you, and that is because maybe just dive in a little bit more about why it was a big learning. Obviously, it was your first major event, but what made it such a revelation for you in terms of progressing your competitive fab career?
So I think it was just the punishment in and how you sequence things. You have to. It's just why I love this game. I mean, you have to play well to win. And then coming from Dragon Ball Super and Yu-Gi-Oh, I mean, you kind of don't have to. Like, you can win games in those card games just because your deck is just better. Everything's like brain. In Dragon Ball Super, you kind of just brain dead your curve, but in Flesh and Blood, like there's no permanence, so everything just starts off fresh. You have to recreate your energy, recreate your plays, and like momentum is just so big. It's like some games you're just dominating, and then you just end up losing because you just draw an all red hand, and you just instantly lose all momentum. So I just had to like learn about the punishment. Really, I had to get slammed a couple times. Really hate that I didn't go X2, but I mean it is what it is. I was playing Lexi. So, and my team before even said, because it was my first Silt event, they were like, hey, man, if you can build a Briar deck, build a Briar deck. And they said that, and I was like, oh, man, Briar's not that overpowering. And it didn't hit me until I think it was like round 4. I was playing against Nick Zimmerman, who's like a really good player. And I come in for like, I overflex, I play a Frazzle, fuse it. It's after like he did his little turn. I think he just played Mount Heroic and pass, and I was like, okay, I mean, that's it. That's a nice card. And I come back, and I'm like, my hand's nasty, so I deal 10. And he's like, take 10.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like, so I'm feeling really good. Like I get the Arsenal, a red lightning surge, came in for 10. Everything's working good. And man, he went with the nastiest. It was like Entwine. It was like Weave Earth, red, Entwine Earth fused. It was Bramble Spark fused, Weave Earth. Then he made the Embodiment of Lightning. Then he played Entwine and like fused it or whatever. So it was coming in for like 14 damage. And I had to block out. And granted, I blocked 12 and still took 2. And then he Rosetta Thorn for 2 and 2. So I ended up taking like 7 damage from that turn. And then after that, he follows it up with like Red Earth Lore, Autumn's Touch. And then it just started snowballing. And I couldn't catch up. And I was like, okay, I see why I should play Briar. Because like early on, early on, I was just playing against like the people that kind of force Briar and just not the good Briar decks. But once I got towards the end, the higher tables, I realized like, oh, okay, these are the guys that, are playing the actual. They were like given Briar, and they're actually like playing with a good 10 out of 10 Briar deck. And I think because I took that punishment, I've gotten very lucky with my Silt pulls since then. So can't complain.
Yeah, the karma's kind of coming back around, right? It's just gonna, give you a little bit of a high five before it smacks you down back to earth. Like there's no weirder sort of fall from grace when it comes to your feelings when you're out there and you're like you kind of just string together, you really piece together this really impactful turn where you're sitting there, you're like you said, like, yeah, I smacked this guy for 10 and it felt great, and you're just there. You're there, you're presenting this massive attack, especially in a format where the hero's life total is 20. You're like, I'm just cutting you in half, essentially just slicing you straight down the center, right in half. And then they're just like, take it. And then your feelings, your gut just sinks, man. I swear, it is the worst feeling in the world to deal 10 damage and have them just eat it, because you know the reckoning is coming. I have always sat there. I've like, the way that I say it is just kind of like I played a lot of Katsu a while back, and Briar, like constructed Briar is very similar, in the red Briar list now, where as soon as they start eating damage and have no interest in blocking, you know that something's coming. You're like, oh damn, like it's like the first attack connects, you're like, great. Second attack, awesome. Third attack, you're like, okay, what the hell's up? What is going on? And how much is it going to hurt? But that's awesome. And I'm just curious, because you said that, like, that's a great learning experience. When that occurs, you know exactly, not just about what it takes for yourself to overcome that, and the next time you grow as a player, you learn, but also it's not just the skill set of how to play the hero, how to deal damage, how to maintain momentum, how to block properly. Those little bits and pieces of in the gameplay, you're gonna gain experience, you're gonna learn from that. But how do you overcome, like you said, like it sounds to me almost like you're still kind of, I don't want to say dwelling on the fact that you went X2, but I'm in the same way. I could have probably won that game if I didn't make that mistake in the Pro Quest. But at the same time, I spoke to some people, and it was like my first big quote unquote pro style or major competitive blunder. But how do you get over that? How do you overcome that from like an emotional or a mental perspective?
I think it's just probably just that's actually a good question.
Well, yeah, and it's a little bit, I mean, this, I don't want to say it's sometimes like a question like this is difficult because everyone has a very unique perspective on it. I have never really been in those situations where I have been a competitive player, because I've always been on this side of any particular major event. I've always been the broadcaster. I've always been the entertainment portion of it, the presenter, the host, whatever. So when it came to actually sitting down and playing, like Flesh and Blood, I loved it. And the fact that I was having success at that particular tournament was new to me. But the way that you do it, I find, is like the way that I kind of, analogize it is that winning an event like that, like the progress is that you're kind of climbing a mountain, and unless you reach the peak, the fall is going to feel that much worse, because you're just it's so how people overcome it. And I spoke to some people, friends of mine who have been in the competitive scene, and they've kind of given me advice. Some of them are just like, you have 24 hours to live with it, to commiserate, to be pissed. But then you got to get over it. And I'm wondering if there was any strategies that you may have had. I mean, you've played football. You've been in very highly competitive situations before. How do you overcome those kind of defeats, or, a missed tackle, a drop ball? How does that sort of translate in terms of overcoming these types of shortcomings or errors, let's say?
The only way I've found peace is to just get it right the next time, honestly. It's the best way to get over a loss is to win. So you just have to, make sure you do it right. And, it's flesh, like just the way Flesh and Blood is designed, which I just in the card games that I played before this, it hasn't been like as rewarding as it is to like make the correct play. So like just trying to make the correct play over and over and over again, and sometimes the correct play is not just like super linear. But I think when you start stringing, if you lose a round, that's fine. But then you just start, stringing success back to back and keep the success coming, and then you end up eventually like getting over it. It does suck that in this game, if you lose like very early, then like that will end up coming back to like haunt you. But I just find that stringing success together is just the best way to get over it.
Unless you're the Detroit Lions, because they've been trying that forever.
I'm glad they got that at least. They at least got a tie the last weekend ago. Because I would hate for them to be the first 0-17 team, that would really suck.
Yeah, well, they can go 0-16 and 1. I guess that's a little bit of like a little bit of an asterisk to that.
They'll still be the first 0-16 and 1 team, but it's better than the first 0-17. I'm sure they'll probably get someone in like the last week or something. You know, maybe they'll play a team that's, you know, they're both out of the playoffs. Everyone's already booked their vacation trip to Cancun or something. And,
yeah.
You know, guys are out there not really caring much, and they'll probably sneak up on somebody and get a win. But the funny thing is that they're like, all these games they're losing, they could very easily be like, or they're like 0-9-1 right now. They could very easily be like 500, like 5-5, because they're losing like a lot of close games. But they find a way to like lose a close game. Like they'll be up and then they'll just like blow it. So
I think it was the Thanksgiving game, and I was in the States visiting some friends. And it was just funny because we just it was just on in the background as I was just kind of helping around with a friend of mine and their family, just setting up Thanksgiving Day stuff. And I just kind of looked back at the TV, and I think what I looked at was it was 3rd and 29. I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely a Lions possession. Absolutely, that sounds like a Lions possession. 3rd and 29. I'm not going to argue with this. Let's just watch how this go. Oh, of course, yeah. It's like not even, and then they run the ball. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you running the ball on 3rd and 29? Like, just throw it anywhere at this point. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. So no, but like I get it, and that's a very awesome mindset to have. It's just like, you know, get it right the next time, and don't dwell on it. You know, a learning experience. Every loss, every mistake can be an opportunity to learn. And I always try to, you know, throw that down people's throats at the end of all of my streams and podcasts, is that you're not losing if you're learning. And I do appreciate that, you know that. And your success then from Dallas to Cincinnati to Orlando, how did that progress? I know that you did really well in the ProQuest. So from that Dallas showing to ProQuest, what changed? How did you train to get to 6-0 and top 8 that ProQuest?
So I went from, the ProQuest was pretty much, I got handed like a pretty good briar deck, and like, I wouldn't say, you know, I'm not the best player, but I feel like I'm pretty good. And so like when a pretty good player gets like a pretty good briar deck, then you pretty much get to just cruise the top 8. Like I had pretty much the best equipment you can get. And Plume of Evergrowth is so like, that card's so underrated, because in Briar, like where the hands where you have like an Earthflower Surge in your discard pile, and you got like a handful of blue, which would normally be a dead turn. You got Plume, so you just start pitching the blues, get the Earthflowers back, and if you have, you know, a non-attack in your hand anyway. I remember against one guy when, you know, my hand was practically dead. I had an Arcanic Shockwave in my hand in my arsenal, and I had 4 blue cards. So I had 3 blue cards and a red Earthflower Surge in my hand and Arcanic in my arsenal. So I just went, and he came in for like, I think it was like 12 damage. Like I went to like 4 and he was at 8, and like I just took it, and he was like, "What?" Like, you know, it's one of those like, "Oh, they took it. Their hand must be snapped."
Yeah,
my hand was pretty snapped. So I went pitch a blue, play Earthflower Surge. I had 1 floating. Then I use the Plume effect to I play the Earthflower Surge, get the Earthflower Surge from my discard, add it to my hand, pitch another blue, so now I have 2 floating, play it, and then play the Arcanic Shockwave from my arsenal for 14, and then I came in with Rosetta for 2 and 2, so I dealt him like back like 16, so he died.
Yeah,
but he was like,
like how do you even come back from that?
I wonder you took twin. Yeah, that's but yeah, I got. Oh, what'd you say? Sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say in that 2 and 2 from Rosetta. I mean, that's just,
the 2, yeah. So he blocked literally with his entire hand. He could only block like 10, and then I came in for 2 and 2, and that was like the 4. So he died from 8, which is pretty wild. I think that was one of the biggest things I learned from like Dallas to Cincinnati is I knew you could do some pretty broken stuff in sealed. I just didn't know that like the ceiling for that was like as high as it is. So what I started doing to just get better was to just started because I had a lot of Tales of Aria stuff. So I just go to my shop and just like buy a pack and just try to, you know, break it down and stuff like that. And then at my house I would kind of just like open up a box where I had like just bulk and just like kind of go through it and like build little combos and just go through plays and stuff like that. And that really kind of helped me, understand like the combos and the sequencing and knowing like how tall and how big your play can be. Because that's the main thing when it comes to Flesh and Blood. It's like if your opponent's coming in for like this much, if you can deal this much back, which is more than what they're dealing, maybe you can take it, or designate. You can, knowing how much you can designate to block to still come in for like more than they're already dishing out. So it's basic stuff, but it's stuff that like I had to learn because I didn't have anyone to teach me at the time.
And that leads into the fact that you just appreciate momentum so much more. It's just that eating that 10, but dishing back 14, that they might have to then come back and block is huge. And the fact that you ate it in that one game and then came back for 14 or 18 that they had nothing to do. Like even if they did block everything and you didn't kill them, you had a fresh grip after that. And you can just go full throttle and just kind of rail them right back. It's these little learning pieces that I just so much love about this game, especially momentum. When we were discussing, what to talk about on this podcast, or if there's any particular things, you had mentioned one thing that you were really adamant about is that Briar should not get banned, that it should not get changed. And I tend to agree. I think that it's still too early. I think that things can kind of figure themselves out. We had, the winner of the Hong Kong Nationals was Chain. The winner of the Italian Nationals recently was Kano. Briar was everywhere, but it's not necessarily that it's winning as much as it was before it kind of got out. But I want to hear your, take on it. Why is Briar not as big of a deal as some people might think it is?
So I think everyone literally was just caught off guard. At Nats, the deck ended up being, because before Nats, the boogeyman was Prism. Everyone was trying to get ready to beat Prism, and then this Briar deck emerges with a favored matchup versus the quote unquote boogeyman, and everyone panics, goes into a frenzy, but literally after when that tournament ends, that meta it's over. Like now, if there was a tournament. If there was a week is too soon, but if there was a tournament 2 weeks after Nats, I guarantee you, in the United States, I can't speak for like the other countries, but if there was a tournament in the United States 2 weeks after Nats, I think there would still be a ton of Briar, but I don't think the conversion rate would be like, 50 or 60%. Like it was something crazy.
It was massive. It was, I don't want to say unprecedented, but again, like you said, it's just one of those situations where when the new hotness comes out and everybody wants to touch it, but everybody wants to play it, but nobody wants to solve it, right? Nobody wants to break it. So,
and it's like it's like a super easy deck to like play. It's like do your turn, make sure your Arsenal of Plunder run, and just keep going. Like that's pretty much it. Like it's not really hard to play. But I think like a lot of the decks, like there's a lot of decks that play well into Briar. The most trap deck is Eyes Lexi. I know a lot of people think that like Eyes Lexi has this overwhelming, matchup because of the Frostbites. That's a trap. That's not true. Because I played against a guy who was on Briar, and pretty much if you give them a Frostbite and they have a singular blue in their hand, or if you have Lake Fridge out and they have like a blue card, they pretty like Lake Fridge does nothing to them. They just pitch the blue and they still, do their entire turn. It doesn't matter. But the deck that and also Lexi is like super it's like super inconsistent. Like you can be winning and then draw a handful of, no ice cards or no you always have an arrow, but no ice cards or just a handful of red, and then you just instantly lose momentum and then you're back on the back foot. And that's a deck where like once, like when you're playing Lexi, like once you get on top of Briar, you have to stay on top. Otherwise, like if you give them a turn to play their 5-card hand, you're gonna start losing. But the main deck that I've seen just like destroy Briar is just Viserai. And Viserai has a good matchup versus, to me, I think Viserai has a good matchup versus Lexi. They can have a good matchup versus Oldhim. You obviously have a good matchup versus Briar. So like decks like that would like increase. And I think there was only like 10 Lexis. So you'd see Lexi increase. You would see the Oldhim deck increase, which only had 11. I think all those slots that were Prism, I think those start trickling down to like Briar's. I'm not Briar's. They start trickling down in like this being Viserai list and Lexi's list and Oldhim's list. And we've never seen Briar in a format where, everything's built to counter it. It's just been a format where everyone's built to counter Prism, and because you're built to counter Prism, you just get obliterated by Briar. So
I feel like Briar in that particular Briar list is like the Despacito of like Flesh and Blood, where like as soon as it came out, everyone was playing it all over the time, every single, and then eventually people were like, yeah, maybe it's not that good. Like maybe it's just popular and everybody wants it. But at the same time, I do get the fact that like, yeah, it's a fast deck. It's very easy to pilot to a degree, but it's also cheap as hell to actually acquire because a lot of the main pieces are pieces that you've probably already had. Like the generic equipment, like Tunic and Skullcap. You got to get the Grasp of the Arclight, perhaps, but I mean those main pieces are still there. And then your 3-pack of Command and Conquers maybe, and a 3-pack of E-Strikes. I mean, where else are you really spending money on this deck? It's not really there. You can kind of piece this together with commons and rares and really be aggressive with it.
Yeah, the deck is like super cheap. It's like what, Tunic and Grasp, and I guess they play Arcanite Skullcap, but they're really not getting the value of it blocking for 2, I guess, unless you're like in the mirror match or something, because for the most part they're ahead. So.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, you're just way ahead of the game there, and it's not they
probably do like turn 1 or something, and then that's the only time it blocks for 2, and then that's it. But
so
yeah, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So, like, I mean, in that regard, are you thinking that this is the sort of the train is kind of slowing down here? Like all the momentum of Briar is getting figured out. I mean, the natural progression I feel when it comes to card games is that when something's new and popular, people are more inclined to play it than to play against it, so to speak, where they don't necessarily want to counter it. Because I feel like when something's figured out, it's just easy to jump on that bandwagon and go with it. And I've always said that when it comes to card games, it's like 99% sheep, 1% innovators. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I say sheep in the sense that it's just people that are following the trends. Not everyone has time or resources or the brain power to break metas the way that Tarek did or other players may have in the past. But at the same time, that 1%, that are developing the meta, you also have to rely on them to then re-break it and to counter it. So it might just be a situation where now that so many people have played it, people are just naturally progressing away from it. And like you said, do you think that something like Viserai is actually going to start seeing I don't want to say a resurgence, because I don't think it was ever really a top dog out there, but is that a deck that you think is going to kind of bubble up to the top moving forward?
Yeah, if I had to pick a deck right now, I would pick Viserai. I would need to see first though what because there's a hybrid Briar list that's running around right now that everyone's kind of like hyping up, and I would need to see. They just play more blues in Mount Heroic. That's literally all it is. But they still play the Cheerios cards. But I would need to see like what my matchup is like against that deck first, because I mean I think that build is probably what's going to be like the Briar deck going forward. Everyone thought that you can build counters to Briar, but like Briar, that was just really the first iteration of the Briar deck. Like the Briar deck can evolve as well. I don't think it needs to be banned. It almost lost our finals. As much as we were hyping it up, that game with against Tarek and Michael, those are probably the 2 best players in the game right now. That was a pretty close game. So. Everyone's kind of sleep on Chain as well. That's another deck that could, possibly, be very good. But I would, I think Viserai will see an increased amount of play. That's the main one. I think Viserai will see an increased amount of play. Obviously Oldhim, but Oldhim is a weird one, especially if everyone's trying to play Oldhim because they're trying to beat Briar. Because then you start running into Oldhim mirrors and that could never end. So you don't want to miss out on Top Cut because you're too slow. So that was my main reason for not wanting to play Oldhim in general. Is I just didn't want to go to time, and a lot of Oldhim's win cons are not actually killing their opponents, fatiguing them.
Yes.
So I played against people that, because I was an Oldhim player, who get salty midway through and just like, oh well, I'm fine. We'll just both take a draw then, since you want to you want to do me like this, I'll do you like that.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, okay.
It's this weird brotherhood of like, oh, all right, I see how it is kind of thing. It's like we're both going down with the ship. It's this game of chicken that just nobody wins. Like that's the one thing. It's just, you think about it. It's like, okay, Oldhim as a competitive hero. I mean, I think that games in the top 8 don't have time limits, I don't think, but everything in the Swiss rounds obviously has a time limit. And if you're going in with the objective of just waiting out your opponent, you just got to hope that your opponent doesn't have the same idea as you, man, because it's going to take forever and no one's going to be happy. Like, everyone's going to just go and like, but the first round is going to be like, oh, they're just going to be like 0-1. And then their entire competitive aspirations just went down in flames because they're being stubborn about it. I would love to see Oldhim be a little bit more aggressive, but it just seems it's like, okay, 3 cards to block, pitch a blue ice, and swing whale, and then see you next turn. Like,
which is I mean, it's a solid plan too. Like, it's you know, I can block with 3 cards and come in for 4 and give you a frostbite. Like, it's very solid, but it's just like, when both of you guys are doing that, like, what's the end game here? You know.
They'd have to almost revise how draws are calculated, because right now draws are basically double losses, right? And there's no necessary rules where it's like, okay, if you go to time and then there's the 2 or 3 turn additional timer, let's say, where the higher life count is the victor in that case. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. If the game hasn't resolved, then you both lose. It's just kind of like, thanks for wasting our time. Here's like, screw both of you.
And Oldhim players are like, it seems like all of them are just happy with that style of play. Like, I just don't get it. Like, because I played Ice Lexi, and I was playing one of the side events in Dallas, and I was playing Ice Lexi, and the guy's like, oh, as soon as I said I was playing Lexi, he said he's playing Oldhim. I was like, okay, well, I'll put in like 1, maybe 2 remembrances, go over 60 cards, because I know it. And then he presents me his deck for cut, and I'm like, dude, did you just put your entire 80 cards in here?
Yes.
And I was like, I asked him how many cards were in the deck, and he said at least 60. And I was like, okay, buddy, like, you're obligated to tell me that, but like, I'm just not gonna make a big deal about it because it's a side, like, it's a side event game.
Yeah.
But obviously it was more than 60 cards. It was like 70. And so we played, and he got mad because he lost, because, it's like, I activated Remembrance, and he just like, oh, you played Remembrance? I'm like, dude, you finished shuffling before me. I looked up and saw you had like literally a pile of cards. So like, of course I'm going to put in my Remembrance. Like, your game plan was just to sit here for 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And just like, hope that I just ran out of time.
Your double sleeved Oldhim deck is like 14 inches tall. Like, get off me.
Yeah, it's like a commander deck in Magic. Like, it's just, it's huge. And they get mad because like people, like they literally get mad. Oh man, we're going to time. You're playing slow. I'm like, I'm not playing slow. It's just that like, you're not playing. You're just blocking.
Stop blocking. We'll end this right here. Just stop blocking everything.
Like a man,
Yeah, God, I totally feel that. I remember when I played in a tournament with that list of, like, I played against a couple that wanted to go fatigue, and I just basically said, I'm like, all right, I have no strategy against fatigue other than put in every single possible card in my deck. Like that Briar list was so concise and so tight knit that you're cutting cards out that are good cards, but you just want to really boil it down to like a core 60 to 64 pieces. But when you're adding in like, okay, now we're going to throw in like some yellow ball lightning, some yellow ravenous rabbles, a couple other extra pieces in here. It's like, basically, I'm like, the only reason is because I need enough gas to get to the finish line, and you're basically going to be throwing roadblocks the whole way. But that's the way it is. So frankly, like you said, it's not that we're playing slow. It's just that you're playing to see like, minute 49. Like, that's what you're getting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then they just like get mad, like, oh man, you need to hurry it up. I'm like, dude, like, I knew we were drawing when it got to the 20-minute mark, and we were still at 40 life. Like, it's over. Like, so there's no need to hurry up like we drew. So,
and that's the worst way to end it. That just feels like it's such a bad resolution.
Worst way to end it. That's just one of the reasons why I don't like want to play the deck. I guess maybe the footsteps can kind of do a little bit of damage, but like in the mirror match, it doesn't really matter because they literally just have so much. Like, they got Crown, the shield, the ability, and they can block. So like, that's 7. So like, your Glacial Footsteps dominated for 10. did 3 damage. So like, it's just no reason to even. I just can't play the deck. I can't do it, and I don't even think it'll have a good matchup versus the if this hybrid Briar deck is like really what it's sounding like it is. They're just gonna go too tall. Like now, like everything's coming in for 7. They can't effectively block out all of that damage. So.
Yeah, what terrifies me is a Briar list like the one we saw earlier, where like Bramble Sparks and like Earthlore Surge are just part of the mix. You're like, wow, now you're paying for stuff. Like, god damn, like congratulations, you could pay for things, Briar. Like, well done, amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so before we wrap up the segment, man, so no changes to Briar, like according to you. You think that it's just going to essentially it's going to parse itself out. It's going to figure itself out naturally, right?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I would be really disappointed if we got to like December 14th and they decided to ban some stuff. I actually, to me, I really like what Tarek did. I think he changed the way people like view deck building. It definitely affected me because like now when I deck build, I was so big on like consistency, but seeing basically an all red deck dominate, now I'm just like, okay, maybe I should start looking at ceiling more than just like, consistency, making sure I'm playing this amount of blues. Cause, if you're playing against that deck, I mean, if you can, do some high ceiling stuff, you might actually have a chance, whereas you were just like trying to be as like consistent as possible. Like I wouldn't say abandon all consistency, but just like it's okay now to abandon a little bit of consistency so that you have a higher ceiling deck, especially with a deck like Briar in the middle. I think it was really good for the game, honestly. Like you just changed the way that people view deck building, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what is so fascinating now for a game like Flesh and Blood, which is essentially in its infancy, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, you and I were talking earlier about Magic. That game's been around for 27, 28 years. And here we are talking about the first couple of years of a really, really fascinating games where people are still figuring out just the basics in terms of strategy and deck building, et cetera. So there's so much further to go into. And speaking of which, I mean, we do have another segment. Dale and Mac, it's called Go Again. I'm hoping you'll join us for that.
Oh, yes, definitely.
All right, friends, we'll be right back with Go Again with Dale and Mac after these words from our sponsors at fabdb.net. The Instant Speed Podcast is, of course, brought to you by fabdb.net. Yes, fabdb.net is a great place for you to get hooked up with all of your deck building needs. I'm talking about, you want a theory craft, you want to slam some cards together. You hear that Kano is pretty damn cool, but you know what? Maybe 3 or 4 of the Kano cards do. You want to build something and maybe test it out, but before you put it, the cards together, you dig through your collection, you want to put pen to paper and wrap it up. Well, fabdb.net has you covered. You can go through all the cards, see what they do, highlight them, get the statistics of what your deck's going to look like, because it matters. And trust me, you want to upgrade your collection and your account to premium version. Oh yes, it's like foiling out your account. I'll tell you why. Because there's some pretty cool things in there like simulated booster drafts, simulated booster sealed packages, and things of that nature. Keep your collection on tab and ready to go, friends. Fabdb.net is your premier place to build your Flesh and Blood decks. All right, it's time to go wide on Dale and Mac, as it is again. We go with a series of rapid-fire questions. This is called Go Again. Are you ready, my friend, for some Go Again?
I'm ready.
Awesome stuff. All right, with my first action, I will ask you, my friend, what is harder, winning a Super Bowl or winning the Nationals for Flesh and Blood?
That's a tough one. I probably winning Nats and Flesh and Blood, just because it's variance. Variance plays a factor, so I'd say that's pretty much it.
All right.
That's Nationals, Flesh and Blood, because of the card variance.
Okay, I dig it. All right, so we have basically settled it here. Tarek Patel greater than Tom Brady, at least for now. What hero will reign supreme after Everfest? Because everyone's getting some help in that set. From what I there's going to be new specializations for basically every hero, so every hero is going to get a little bit of something. But what do you think is who do you think is going to emerge?
I know what class it'll probably be.
We might be on the same wavelength. Just let us know.
I honestly, man, I'm gonna do what everyone's been saying. I'm gonna say Kano is gonna get the buff this time. I think Kano is gonna be the deck. So I'll say Kano is gonna reign supreme.
I have to agree with you here because I think that Kano is just a hero that a lot of people just didn't want to take the time to figure out. But now that Kano's winning and Kano won Italian nationals and is just, I think people are finally saying, you know what? I think I should put the effort into learning it. And it's already a good deck that has such a difficult skill ceiling to actually be good at. And I think that if it gets like one more good card, it's gonna just bust things wide open. So I'm with you on that one. All right. There's going to be reprints coming. We already know about the Arcanite Skullcap with Everfest. What's a card that you want to see be reprinted? Maybe not in Everfest, but at some point.
I want to see reprinted.
Could
Probably
be something.
Command and Conquer. Yeah, Command and Conquer probably be one gets reprinted.
Now, is there any reason for that? Or are you just saying that like you want more people to have it, or you just want to bring the price down to maybe collect a few more? Or?
Well, I'm a guy that likes to build like multiple decks and have like multiple copies of the card, and CNC just goes into every deck. So like, I wish that it was just cheaper to buy. I wish it wasn't $300 for a playset. So, and it's the ultimate generic card. I mean, everyone plays CNC. Everyone's trying to play a 5-card hand. So I think that one would just be good for the game, honestly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think you're wrong about that. I would always say that something like, I always feel like legendary equipment is kind of a tough one to I mean, like Arcanite Skullcap, but like I think that reprinting Tunic, and they've already done it. So I mean, I don't know how many more times you could do it, but like staples like that, equipment, things that people need to play with in order to be competitive. Yeah. I think that's fair. But Command and Conquer, man, I don't think there's a better generic card that goes in, like you said, every single deck. Maybe E-Strike, but those are the ultimate staples.
I will say if they weren't reprinting Arcanite Skullcap, then I definitely would. That would be my pick if they weren't reprinting that one, just because it's just generic. But yeah, they already reprinting Tunic. They're now reprinting Skullcap, which means that set's going to be pretty. You'll be able to make your money back on that set, which is I'm happy about that.
Have you already put in your pre-orders for that one?
It's so weird because they're doing reveals like January 24th, and the set drops a week later. So
yeah,
I have to assume that like it's going to be worth me pre-ordering, but like I really would like to see like, do I need to pre-order or can I just buy singles? I think my shop's gonna start taking pre-orders maybe next week or something like that.
Everyone says they're gonna wait, and then as soon as their pre-order happens, there's just like, I'll just pick, maybe I'll buy like one box, maybe a case, and then it kind of spirals.
I gotta make sure I get a case, but I can't just do one box and then someone else gets like, oh look what I got, the Skullcap, and the new Kano card.
Yeah, no, you can't do that because then you're gonna feel like such a doofus. You're like, that's what hurts the most. Not opening bad cards, but knowing that someone else opened the better card in the same box or whatever. Like that's just like that hurts. That actually hurts. I don't care about getting screwed out of a case. But if someone opens a case and we're splitting boxes and everyone else gets hits and I don't, then it's just then I feel bad. Then I'm mad.
There was a time when Arya came out. And everyone's trying to get the Fabled. My shop had like 70-something cases. And I had got like 3. And they were like, go up there and like just grab three cases or whatever. And so I was just touching like, oh, I bet this one has a Fabled or this one has it. And so my owner went up and said, which one you said had the Fabled? And I was like, this one. He's like, okay, well, I'll take that one. And he opened it. And they had already pulled the Fabled earlier. And he's like, oh, we just pulled the Fabled out of that box you said you were going to get. And I was like, what? Like,
yeah, no.
Man, like, why would you do that? I was pissed. I was like, are you serious? Like, that's the box I wanted. And he was joking. No, we already opened it. And he's like, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, those kinds of bad feelings will follow you home. When I went to go pick up my case of Arya, it was the same thing. It was just literally, I went to the store on the day, and there was stacks and stacks. Yeah, just pick whichever one you want. I'm like, oh no, I am not gonna be the reason why I hate myself. So like, it's not what.
Man, in the price tanked so hard on it. Like, it's not even. I don't even think it's $500 now. Like,
for a case? Yeah, no,
no, not for a case. I'm talking about a course.
The Fabled. Well, remember when I think it was it Vegas? No, where was it?
Vegas.
Vegas, where they first had the first Arya stuff or the pre-release or whatnot.
One sold for 4,000, right?
Yeah, like straight away, the first one ever came. Honestly, also, it's probably there's a little bit to it. It's like the first one ever pulled, like on record, in an official event. So like, there's a little bit to it, but it sold for like $4,000, and now you're thinking about it, it's like you can pick one up for like like $500 if you're if you want it, and it's. I have always been told, and this is something that happened to me, and I learned very quickly, was that I learned what standard rotation was and what it did to prices of cards, because I did that with Magic, where I'm like, oh, I'll just play these until it rotates out. And then when it rotated out, I was like, why are all these cards now worth nothing? It's like, oh, right. Now we know. But people also realize that Corsham is kind of hot garbage. So it's like nobody plays it.
Yeah.
Is there a card that you never want to see reprinted? We've talked about the ones that you would, but what's one that you never want to see reprinted?
Never want to see reprinted. That's a tough one. Never want to see reprinted.
Or we could even stretch this. Like, what about a certain card that perhaps, like, for instance, maybe it's not something like Tunic or Skullcap or whatever, but what if it's something like another 4-block defensive reaction? Like, you have Fate Foreseen, you have Sink Below, stuff like that. Are there what other cards are you just saying, enough? Like, I don't want to see these ever again.
Yeah, it's definitely the sinks in the face. Like generic 4-block D-reacts for free. Like that can't keep being a thing. Because the next deck is just gonna they're already playing 8, and they likely have one that's already in their class, so they're playing 12, and these Oldhim decks will probably play all 16. So
in their 80 card stack for sure.
Yeah, that's when I would not want to see another free generic defense react. That'd be tough. That'd be tough to see.
So what's a card?
I was going to say.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say Plunder Run, but that's obviously easy to get. But like, please stop. Like that might just be one card. I'm just like, you know what, man, this card's just too good.
It is too good, and there's 3 different copies of it.
I understand the like aggro like decks needed, but like when you look at what it's doing, it's the only thing really keeping chain like super lethal. Like my seeds are gone. I guess I'll just play 9 Plunder Runs now. Like, it's keeping them in the mix. So,
and it's the worst part is that it like all the cards that come after it have that inherited effect of on hit draw a card, and decks like Briar or Chain that can just generate go-agains whenever they want, more or less. It's like, wow, okay, like let's just calm down here. Like we don't need this turn to last forever, but thanks for playing.
I'm saying Plunder. I'm sorry. I'm saying Plunder Run, and then they'll probably end up printing like I keep hearing rumors. I don't know if this is true or not, but people keep saying Shadow Ninja is going to get printed, and I'm like, man, Plunder Run would sound great in Shadow Ninja, but.
Wow. Okay. Hold on. Like that is something that I did not hear. Shadow Ninja. Okay. Like I said when I think it was Garbage Andy. He was asking for people's hot takes on Everfest, and I said that Ninja was going to get a weapon that was going to replace Kodachi's in terms of what the best if for a viable competitive Ninja deck. And now if there's something like a Shadow Ninja that pops up like down the line, that opens up so much freaking cool space.
Yeah, probably got to get my Husk now.
Yeah,
it's already super cheap, but yeah, I think that would make you get Husk, you get Mask, like now they all of a sudden start blocking for 10 for no reason. Or just off of equipment. Yeah. But yeah, I think honestly, I would be down for that. Shadow Ninja and we already got Shadow Brute. What's the other one? We don't have Shadow Bravo cards, right?
There's no Shadow Guardian. There's like Light Guardian, I think. I believe Light Guardian is the thing, if I'm not mistaken, or Light Warrior. Is it Light Warrior or Light Warrior?
It's like Light Warrior. We only got Shadow Brute and Shadow
Runeblade.
Yeah, Shadow Runeblade. So is Ninja the only class that doesn't have one from the first set?
That has like something. There's like Light Illusionist. Like in terms of from the first set, Guardian and Ninja. There's just the one Ninja besides Benji and Ira, but those are there's
Shadow. Wait, yeah, Shadow. It would be Shadow Guardian or Light Guardian, and Shadow Ninja or Light Ninja. Yeah, that would be nice.
That would be.
Yeah,
so
I think
sweet.
those are the only two. Yeah, I think those are the only two that don't have Shadow stuff. I would definitely be down for Shadow Ninja. That seems pretty cool.
this is the lore. Like, I gotta dive into this lore because something like Shadow Ninja just sounds so badass. So what's a card that you were just completely wrong about? Like, everyone sees cards when they come out, or you think that they're like they say like, oh, this is going to be hot garbage, and then it turns out to be great. And then there's cards that are just, you think that they're going to be absolute bombs, and you were just completely wrong about. For me, I'd say it was Blink. I thought Blink was going to have a little bit more interest, but I was completely way off. It's just kind of garbage now. But what's a card that you were just completely way off on?
So I thought Winter's Bite was just gonna be mad oppressive. And it's good, but like it is not nearly as it's not nearly as oppressive as I thought. Like it's probably better in I thought it was gonna be super oppressive in Oldhim, but it's probably better in Lexi because you can reveal it with Lexi, give him a Frostbite, and like play it and take a card out of their hand. So it's kind of like you take a card and a half, which is kind of nice. Mm-hmm. But like I thought it was going to play a way bigger role in the meta than it's playing right now. So that's one I was wrong about. And then another card that I overhyped was Electrify, and that's in like draft and sealed format. Well, sealed is good. Draft, like I think that card is like mad overrated. I think it's like really only good in like probably on the Lexi decks because you make sure you get the +3, but like I think that card is like very, very overrated. Like there's too many times where like it was my pack one, pick one, and like I would have rather took like a red Autumn's Touch over a red Electrify. Like I would do that. I would take the Autumn's Touch.
It's a good one. I've seen such a dichotomy of opinions about Electrify, where some say it's probably one of the best cards in that set in terms from a limited perspective, and now like hearing it from you saying like I would rather have just a big red bomb, like it's just something to just drop on my opponent. I tend to agree. I think a lot of the appeal of that card is just the fact that you're drawing when you're playing it out of Arsenal, right? And there's a little bit of appeal to that. What is
wish it was like something.
What's your fave format? Yeah, I mean, you're very proficient, like you said, in sealed. You did really well in sealed. Draft, something that you're getting better at. Blitz Skirmish League is going on right now. What is your favorite format to play?
Favorite format? No. I like draft. I just like open up the packs and just seeing what people do. But it probably is. It's probably CC. I think CC is the one. It's my favorite format.
A purist.
Even though I do like draft. I think CC is the format. I feel like our draft is. I think our draft is actually like more skillful than our sealed and CC. Just because like you have to be good at draft and then you have to be able to play what you drafted. Whereas CC, it's kind of like, you're playing Briar, you just Arsenal your ponder run. That doesn't take much. But and then in sealed, it's like if you're a good player and you get the like for just I don't know if this is how like other sealed formats in this game have been. This is my first one I played sealed in. But I feel like if you're a good player and you get the Briar deck, then you just get to go to top cut. Like, you just get to go to top cut.
It's like, oh, how many Bramble Sparks is that? That's 4 Bramble Sparks. Oh, congratulations. Welcome to the top 8. Like, you just made it. That's amazing.
Yeah, like, because if it's like, after round 4, literally, the top 10 tables are all just going to be like Briar Mirrors. Like, everything else just didn't make it. And that's literally what happened at the ProQuest. We had 232 people, and after, like, round 4, after round 3, I knew that I was only playing Briar Mirrors from here on out, and that's literally what happened. I just played Briar Mirrors for the next 3 rounds. Like that's pretty much just what happens when you have Arcane and no way to block it. And someone said that maybe they should just put a way to block it in sealed, and I'm like, no, maybe they should just have Arcane, because even if you have a way to block it, you still have to get the equipment that blocks it. And blocking Arcane is just not efficient anyways. It's like it's super not efficient. Like you pitching a whole card, which probably could block for 3 or more than the Arcane is even coming in for, is just not really worth it.
So I played against. I went in the 6 rounds of Swiss for ProQuest. I played against 6 Briars, so it was 6 consecutive Briar Mirrors, all Briar Mirrors. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Not only that, like looking to my left and looking to my right, all Briar players. Like everybody was just like, why even bother? So of your 6 rounds, you played. How many rounds of Swiss did you play for ProQuest?
We played 6 rounds. 6 rounds of Swiss.
How many Briar mirrors did you play?
I played 5.
Yes. Yeah, like,
my first opponent was. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say no. Like you play, and you had 232 people in the field. So you'd think that maybe. So, but you said your first opponent was.
First opponent was on Lexi, and then after that, it was just Briar.
Yeah, like it's the bottom half of all the Swift. It's like all the Lexis were just swimming around, fighting each other at the bottom of there. But it's like, oh man,
it's funny because my opponent in my round 5 tried to like kind of Jedi mind trick me. So he can't. So I'm at 2, and he comes in with the ball lightning for 3. That's his only card, and he has 1 card in his hand. And I basically like looked at my hand and was like, if I have to overblock here, I don't have enough to kill him on his turn. And if I let him play another 5 card hand into me, I just lose the game. So I basically had to block just enough so that I could like kill him with my hand, because I couldn't dedicate more than a card. And I was just I thought about all my options, and I basically got to the point I was like, well, if you have the lightning press, you just win the game. And he was like, yeah, I'll play 2. And I was like, okay, buddy, that's not changing my play. Like, this is just what I have to do to win the game. So like, I just go and I like block 3, and I'm just like, hey, you got lightning press, you win. And he's like, okay, I'll just Arsenal pass. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to be like a gentleman and show him like, hey man, I have game. I just flashed him like I have Arcanic Shockwave, and I had Bramble Spark, Arcanic, and like something else. I don't know. He was like 3. So he was dead or whatever. He was dead. And he was like, yeah, I'll play the heal card, the gain life card. And I was like, okay, like that's not gonna really you can't do it on my turn. So I'm like, okay, I'll let you draw your cards. Like if you want to see what you're gonna draw for your turn. And then, I played Bramble, played Arcanic, fused it. That's game. Like it's 2 arcane, use that too. So, and he was he was like, oh yeah, you got it. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, everyone's got a plan until they get smacked in the face with arcane damage. Like that's basically it.
Yeah.
I won one of my ProQuest games by taking damage. They were at 1. And they went on a freaking heater against me. And I was like, I was like, okay, I had gone through, it was like turn 8 or 9 by then. And I had cycled through most of my deck. And I knew that I had 1 Sigil of Suffering in there, and they were at 1 health. And I was like, okay, I'm literally taking a chance here. I need to find this Sigil of Suffering or I lose, because the next arcane that they hit me with. So it was 1-1. And I drew it, and they come in with an attack. And I was just like, Sigil of Suffering. And I was like, oh, I did it. I won on your turn. I feel like such a badass. It was just, I was nicer about it, obviously. But they were like, it was just one of those things where I blocked with everything. I gave them the turn back. I drew up to 4. And they start presenting their attacks. Like, all right, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I will present no blocks. He's like, all right, good game. I'm like, hold on a second there, Professor. Just drop down the sigil. And it's just one of those things where they're just kind of looking, they're like, well, I guess I'm dead. I'm like, it was a good game though. Like I lost or I won 1-0. Like it was just a really, really good game. But again, 6 Briar mirrors. So you kind of have to figure out other ways to entertain yourself at that point, because it was just crazy.
See, that's like so bad. Like people are losing on their own turn because they just can't block arcane damage. Like,
yeah, isn't that weird? It's so weird.
Yeah, like you can't even win because you're like. It's just bad, and there's so many good arcane cards. So do you choose to go first or second when you're playing like against the Briar?
I'm always, no matter what, I'm usually always going first, because I just like to play with an arsenal. Like it just makes so much sense, and I'll like pitch in a weird way or I'll pitch like a bunch of reds to pay for something. Like if I could swing for something big, I'll do it, but I don't want them to filter their hand for me to just make a big play that has no actual momentum, that I'm not gaining any tempo off of it. So typically it's like, all right, 1 card's for Arsenal. I'll pay 2 reds to swing with a red. like, you know, an Autumn's Touch or something, or I'll just swing with my, you know, like whatever I can do to set up a better turn. But I don't want to give them any opportunity to, like, I'll hit them with something that's like an odd number, like a 7 or a 4, where they'll probably give me 2 cards, and I'm hoping that's what they'll have to make a tough decision, and it'll break up, you know, their turn. But going first just seems, as Briar, just seems the correct way to go, because you're coming back, like, you'll eat whatever damage they send you, and you're coming back with 5 cards, right? So it just, that to me makes sense.
See, in sealed, I choose to go second, and in draft, I was choosing to go second as well. But I think in draft, if you're playing Briar, you're supposed to go first, and in sealed, I just like going second in sealed because I just want to be the first one to like apply like the real pressure, because whether or not like your hand is good, like if I can just apply a 10 on your like turn 1 or whatever, even if you have a 5-card hand, and I mean I still like dropped 10, and whatever you come back with, I'm probably inclined to take it if I can just keep dishing out the damage. But in draft, I chose to go second, and that was just very, very wrong, because my opponent like maximum high rolled me. He just went Flicker Wisp fused with the Ball Lightning, so that's already 2 arcane that I just took. And then he goes, play Bramble Spark, play the Ball Lightning. Okay, so that's 3 more arcane. So now I'm already at 15, and I haven't even got a chance to block. So I block, and then he just pitches his last card and goes Rosetta for 2 and 2. So I took 7 unavoidable damage, and I'm like, wow. Like, I just took 7 damage for literally no reason, and I didn't get a chance to block with any of these cards. So it's just like really, really bad.
You're a passenger in that regard. Like, remember we were talking about, like, okay, you opened your sealed pool, you got 4 Bramble Sparks, welcome to top 8. Oh, is that a Sting of Sorcery? Yeah, welcome to the finals. Like, congratulations, you made it. Flicker Wisp, here's your trophy. Like, we won't even be.
Which is what happened to me in the Procrest. Like, I got the Flicker Wisp. I got Flicker Wisp and Force of Nature, and that was just like, wow. Like, and then my opponent, not my opponent, but the person I was opening my packs was like, made a joke. Was like, hey man, look at these arrows. You sure you don't want to play Lexi? And I'm like, yeah, I'm positive I don't want to play Lexi. Never want to play Lexi.
Yeah, they're like, wow, you got a red Overflex. Cool, throw it in the garbage. Not interested. Thanks for.
I honestly think if I play like another sealed event for this game, if I open up the Lexi deck, I probably would just go play inside events. Like, to me, it's just like it's that bad in sealed. Like, I feel like the older matchup is basically unwinnable. Like, it's
with
your
Lexi?
arrows for 5. Your arrows for 5 dominated, or they just laugh. They just laugh at you. Oh, you're going in for 5. All right, we'll block 3. And then move to D-reacts. Okay, and not just block your arrow for 5 dominated.
Yep. You need to beat Oldham with, like, you need like 6 Overflexes, and they all have to be red. Like, that's basically the only way to do it.
They legit all have to be red, which isn't that hard because Overflex is getting passed around very, very frequently.
Oh yeah.
In draft.
Yeah, well, there you go. You can be the coolest Lexi player that no one wanted to be. All right. Now, if you got to say one nice thing about the Canadian Football League, what would it be?
That they give people a chance to keep playing. I guess they got a chance to keep playing. But there's so many leagues now, man. Like, I think there's like the XFL is like trying to do something for like the 1,000th time.
I was gonna say this would be like attempt number 4 or 5 by now, right?
Yeah, and the Rock says he's in charge of it or something.
Well, they tried to revive it, but then COVID happened. I don't know if they scrapped it again, but I didn't know that the Rock was actually involved as like part owner of the league, or he was going to help run the league or something. I don't know where that was going to go, but
he is the owner of the league, but I'm not sure. I know like some of the people I train with are like training to go and like play in it. So they were like mentioning it and stuff, and I was just like overhearing them talk about it. But yeah, I'm not really. I mean, yeah.
Hey, if ever, I'm telling you, I mean, like, just say, like, Toronto Argonauts, there's got a decent, there's a decent Flesh and Blood community out here in Toronto. You can come over here, you can stay with me, you can play, it'd be great.
Yeah, I love, the most enticing thing would be that me and you could just grind and play Fab.
Damn right, absolutely.
But as far as, I love football, but, like, I'm not playing in another league that's not the NFL. I don't love. I don't love it that much.
Would there ever be a place for me on a team? I'm like 5'10", I weigh about $165. Like, is there ever a position on a football team that is perfectly designated for somebody like me?
Can you kick a football?
Not far. I mean, I could kick it. It's not like to. I suppose.
I will say this: there are some people that are like, when you look at the way they're built, and I'm just like, man, like, this guy can't play. And you get out there, and I was like, oh shit, like, yeah, he's the best player out here. Like, I remember going against as my freshman year, I was going. I don't know if you know his name, but I was going against Marshall Yonda, and he was, like old, probably in his last year. I'm just looking at him how he's built, and I just got out of, all this rigorous training from the combine, pro days, like all this in training. So I'm like in the best shape of my life, stronger than I've ever been, young. And I'm going against him. I'm looking at him like, oh man, this guy, I'm just gonna jack him up.
Yeah,
man. He locked me up so quick, and I was like, dude, this is like actual grown man, 13-year veteran pro level strength. Like, his technique, like, okay, I see why this guy is like first ballot Hall of Famer. So that's when I knew that it was not all about the way you look or the way you're built.
Yeah. It's not just about smacking down the biggest like hammer swing as Bravo. It's about how you pitch stack and how you train. And I feel you, buddy.
Yeah.
I feel it. I mean, that's why I never, pursued a career in football. Not because I'm short, scrawny, and can't run fast, but other reasons as well. I mean, I use my talents elsewhere. All right, last question for Go Again for Dalen Mack, and this is the one I always end on. It's, where do you see Flesh and Blood in 5 years from now?
Ooh, Flesh and Blood in 5 years. Honestly, I really see it as I see it as the hottest TCG. I mean, it's growing. LSS have shown that they are committed to this game. The turnout that we've gotten from Cincy to Dallas it went from Dallas, being like, okay, this is a nice turnout. It's a nice turnout. And then people didn't really think we were going to get a big turnout for Cincy, and we got a bigger turnout for Cincy. And obviously Nats is Nats. And I didn't go to Vegas, but I heard Vegas had like 1,000 or something for like the little.
Yeah, they were upwards of like 900 people, I think, for all said and done, close to 1,000 people for, I forgot how much the main event was. It was like 800 or 900 people, but it was a big deal.
Yeah, and this is the games, like, I mean, not knocking any of the events that we've had, since the event, but like next year is supposed to be like the real like year for like competitive play and stuff like that. Like, this was just like this was kind of like a tease. Like, hey, we're doing this, we're going to have a NAS, but next year is supposed to be like the real actual calling season. So there's going to be no telling, like, how many people we're going to get for those. And like the dedication from people in the community, like I'm seeing the same guys, week to week. That was a tough 4-week stretch right there where you got, 3 events, literally 3 different locations. Seeing some of the same people, the commitment, they were doing. Saw some guys from the card guys, other teams, just like everyone, the commitment that everyone was doing just to keep coming to these events. So, I mean, yeah, that's really nice. Yeah.
North America is a big place, man. And like these people who are traveling to go to these events, religiously and preparing for them too. There's a lot of dedication. And like you said, LSS, it's just like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. 2021 was the appetizer, right? Like the meat and potatoes are coming next year. And they're hyping it up with like $1 million of prize money for all this stuff. So there's a lot going around.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say there's a lot around the corner, and I know a lot of people are kind of like not necessarily in a lull, as it were, where people are kind of just waiting and really biding their time to hear what's coming around the corner. But it's the holiday season now. People are kind of just chilling out. We just finished up with all the nationals, and there's so much left to do, and people are so geared up for it that it's like. It's not even December yet, and people are saying like, "Give me some January news, like straight away." Like I can't help myself. People are literally saying, "I'm like, I just spent a weekend with family and I away from the game, and I can't stand myself anymore. Like they just want to go out there and play.
I'm literally here shuffling cards right now as we're talking. But I believe I think Matt Rogers literally went to all of them. I'm like, wow, that's dedication. And he went to all three of these.
Oh yeah.
I live in the United States, and I'm like, man, this is kind of just tough to just keep going to all these events. Just being tired from traveling and being in a hotel room with 6, 7 other people all the time. But I think he went to all of them. I think Dante Delfico.
Yes, he went to all of them.
Yeah, I was going to actually go to the Colin in Utrecht in Europe, but unfortunately they canceled. So I was trying to go play, make sure my ELO is. I don't know how they're going to do that, the ELO with the Pro Tours, but I was just going to try to make sure that my ELO is high enough for, if they do the invites off of ELO, I just want to make sure that my ELO was up there so that I would get past invite, because I would hate to miss the first Pro Tour. But apparently the Pro Tour is not one big tournament. It's like a month of events or something, right?
I'm not sure exactly how that's going to break out, but I'm still kind of waiting for information again. I wish I had a little bit more insider information on this stuff. I'm kind of just sleuthing a lot of it as we go. That's why it's always fun to have guests on the podcast, because they kind of drop us with interesting information, as it were. But I'm still trying to lock down James White as a guest. He said he wants to be on the show. He just has to work it out with the schedule. So we're hoping for January for that, that's when I'm going to hit him with all the important questions like, give me cards and why give me cards and stuff like that. I don't know.
You gotta make sure he's the creator of the game, right? You gotta make sure you grill him. He's like, hey, look, we need all these answers.
I'm gonna go
right here.
I'm gonna go full Larry King on his ass, like absolutely. Just stare him right into his soul and say, all right, tell us everything that's gonna happen in the next 5 years, verbatim. Let's go. Yeah, no, you're not getting off easy. But Dalen, I do sincerely appreciate you being on the show, my friend. Again, someone whom I think you and I just kind of casually, out there in the Twitterverse, just kind of cross paths. And since then, it has been a great friendship. I do appreciate you being on the show, my friend.
Thank you, man. I enjoyed it.
Well, for those of you who might not know all about Dalen Mack, besides the fact that, superstar athlete, awesome card player, just a great competitor, someone to look out for on the Flesh and Blood competitive scene, just tell us where we can kind of follow along with your content, your musings and such.
You just follow me on Twitter. I'm just at Dalen Mack. I actually just got my Instagram back because they MetaZoo is pretty much based off of Instagram, and I was trying to follow along because they just launched the NFT, and which is quite expensive actually. I did not think it was going to be 25 G's for the MetaZoo NFT, but it is what it is. But yeah, you can follow me on easy to reach on Twitter. Just at Dalen Mack.
Beautiful. And a great follow he is. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Instant Speed podcast, brought to you by Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood's premier source for deck building tools and resources. Of course, I'm talking about fabdb.net. Go ahead, go to fabdb.net, upgrade your account to premium. You will not regret it, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Flake. This has been the Instant Speed podcast with our guest, Dalen Mack. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. Keep shuffling the cards, you might win. We'll see you next week.